Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be refinishing this end table here with some Rust-Oleum Coastal Blue spray paint. I found this little guy at the thrift store for $14.99. It's in great condition and it's ready for a makeover. So here's the product. Let's see what it looks like on furniture. Let's get started. First, let's remove the hardware. Yep, good start, good start. Finally, after removing the hardware, I'm going to use some stripper, and we're going to strip the top of the table, and we're going to strip the front of the drawer. The reason I chose stripper for this project is I wanted to use a very fine steel wool on the drawer so I didn't scratch it up at all, because it's a weird, odd shape to sand and it would probably leave scratch marks. I left this stripper on for around 30 minutes before trying to take it off. It didn't work as well as some other times I've used stripper, but it still removed some of the top layer, and then all I needed to do was grab some mineral spirits and steel wool, and we can rub off some of the extra residue that was stuck on. I did the same thing to the drawer. I think the steel wool is what worked best on that though. After cleaning up the mineral spirits and stripper, I'm going to use 180 grit sandpaper, and we're going to start sanding the tabletop. As you can see, I didn't remove everything with the stripper, so we're going to use the sandpaper and just take our time. This did take a little bit of time to remove everything. After finishing sanding the top, I'm going to sand by hand on the ends of the table. On the front of the drawer, I'm just using a 220 grit sanding sponge. I didn't want to scuff up anything on the drawer, so we're just going to take our time with the 220 sanding sponge. Now I'm going to do a light sanding over the entire project where we're going to be painting with the Rust-Oleum chalk paint. But before any painting and staining, I'm going to use some mineral spirits again and clean everything up so we have a clean finish. I chose to paint the project first, so I'm going to tape up the top of the table and make sure no paint can hit it. It's not required to prime before using Rust-Oleum's chalk spray paint, but it says you can use a Rust-Oleum primer, so I chose their flat white primer, and I'm just going to put a light coat just so it sticks on a little bit better. Before each coat of paint, we're just going to do a light sanding with the 220 grit sanding sponge. I find sometimes with these spray cans, every now and then you get a rough finish, so it's good to just sand it smooth before finishing up. Finally, it's the moment everyone's been waiting for. Let's try out this Rust-Oleum chalked spray paint. We're going to be applying 2 coats, so the first one can be a lighter coat. We don't need to overspray and cause any dripping, so you can watch the process. Here's before it dries, and here's when the first coat is dry. Came out pretty nice, but we're going to put one more coat on it just for some extra durability. Before spraying on the second coat, I went over with the 220 grit sanding sponge just to quickly smoothen everything out. Plus I did a quick dust wipe. So just like the first coat, we are going to grab the can and let's spray on a second coat. After thinking you're finished, do a quick scan of the whole piece just to make sure you didn't miss any spots. After letting that dry, let's peel off this tape and get rid of the cardboard so we can start staining the project. I'm using a darker wood finish by Minwax called Ebony. Simply grab a brush or a rag and just apply it on the surface. I didn't have a plastic glove on hand, so what I did was just wrap a plastic bag around my hand just so the stain wouldn't go on my skin, because it can be pretty difficult to get out. After letting the stain penetrate and sit in the wood for about 15 minutes, you can grab a clean rag and just wipe off the extra stain. And don't forget to do the drawer as well. You can do the same process. Put the stain on, let it sit for 15 minutes, and then wipe it off. I let the stain dry overnight, but the next morning I realized I wanted it to be a bit darker, so I applied another coat of stain just to make it darker. So I wanted to bring these old handles back to life, so I'm using 180 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to scuff them up and clean them up enough, and then I'm going to paint over them. I'm using Rust-Oleum Specialty Metallic Gold Spray Paint. After letting one side dry, you can spray the other. And when everything was dried up, I actually applied some dark wax over the handles just to give them a nice finish. Over the chalk paint, we're going to use Varathane finishing wax. I don't mind the coastal blue that the Rust-Oleum spray paint gave me, but I kind of want it darker. So after applying this clear wax, I'm actually going to use some dark wax over it just to give it a darker look. It's recommended that you apply your clear wax before using dark wax. This is the dark wax I'm using, but for the most part, any dark finishing wax will do the trick. When applying the dark wax, you can just rub it on, just dab it in and then start rubbing it on, but instead of doing a circular motion to finish, I think you should rub it back and forth. I don't use wax very often, but when it dried up on me, it was a little harder to polish off in a circular motion than it was in a straight back and forth motion. The product says let it dry for 2 hours, so I did, but if I was to do this again, I'd probably wipe it off after a couple of minutes, just because I was only trying to go for a darker color. Because I wiped it in a circular motion, it was kind of hard to get rid of it, so it just took a bit of extra time to smoothen everything out. To apply over the drawer and the tabletop, I'm using Varathane Diamond Wood Finish. It's water-based and it is a semi-gloss finish. I'm going to apply 3 coats of this spray-on top coat over the drawer and over the tabletop. So let's look at the end table one more time before we painted it and stained it. And here is the final product. If you guys like this flip, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because there's a lot more furniture flips coming your way. Thanks for watching.